Hello, everybody. Everything new under the sun. So, we're talking today about Israel, Iran, and a war that is ongoing. But Iran is also saying that it has started and it's covert, and it's been covert for many years now, and lots of things happening there. We're going to take a look at that. But the key thing here, as it relates to Bible prophecy, is if we are that close to the 7 year period and to the Antichrist coming onto the world stage and setting up a peace deal, a treaty, a covenant with Israel for 7 years, let them build their temple, etc., we basically, effectively, need some sort of war so that the world is in such a place where everybody is calling for a world leader and will happily accept a world leader to come on the stage and to implement a one world currency system and to implement a one world government and to bring along a false prophet, a spiritual leader alongside to help guide the world in, I guess, into an enlightened 7 year period and a time of peace, supposedly with Israel. So that war is one of the things that we're looking at next. If you notice the arrows, I've got Isaiah 17, destruction of Damascus, Ezekiel 38, the war of Gog Magog, at least a one fulfillment of that, and also the economic collapse. So I don't know in which order those are. To me, I would think that economic collapse happens first, and that exacerbates the troubles all around the world enough so that countries are then looking to war and frustrated with each other because they're bankrupt. When countries go to war, often it's because they're bankrupt. They've got no other choice. They want to their country's falling apart. They want to point the public at an outside problem to rally them together. So war is one of those big things, I think, that's going to bring in the Antichrist figure, the leader, and allow really set us in a place similar along the path as this current situation that's going on for 1.5 years. It's really moved us into an incredible period of time of government control and all that sort of thing. And so likewise, a war, a significant war, especially in the Middle East, would kick us into overdrive in terms of government control as it relates to world peace, policing, etc. So one side of that. So we're looking at a war coming. That's what I expect. Economic collapse, war, economic collapse. I've always said, I don't know which comes first, but one is probably going to happen right after the other. And we're on the verge of both of them. Economic collapse, there's supply chain warnings and issues, and on the verge of war. Let's take a look at this article here. Iran says war with Israel has already begun. Fresh covert actions. So here is a Twitter page. ISI reveals Monday the 27th, 2021, a mysterious explosion. So another mysterious explosion shook western Tehran. According to ISI intelligence report, the explosion occurred at the IRGC secret missile base of Shahid Hamet Industrial Group. So we have this, apparently apparent strike by Israel. Iran is blaming Israel. Let me scroll down there. You can see on the left the whole building, and on the right, September 27th, part of it was destroyed, a significant part of it. And so Iran is blaming Israel. Amid a recent spat of covert espionage attacks, it says, that's what that links to, that Twitter page, on Iranian infrastructure, some publicly known and more that are possibly unknown, Iran's foreign ministry has declared war with Israel has already begun. So there's an open, if you will, covert war, kind of a common knowledge thing that people around the world, countries around the world, I think, understand is happening, but it's not out in the open. There's not an overt, traditional war happening there. It's all covert espionage, Israel going in there, blowing up facilities or whatever. Foreign Ministry spokesman told the major Israeli national Hebrew language daily newspaper Maariv that Israel carried out attacks that were intended to destroy our nuclear program, which was, of course, according to him, for peaceful purposes. Saeed declared the war with Israel has already begun in an ominous message intended as a warning to the Israeli public and leadership. So he was talking to an Israeli daily newspaper, and that's not common for them to speak directly to daily newspapers. He wanted to talk to the Israeli public. Says the spokesman added that Israel has murdered nuclear scientists and harmed the Iranian people. Iran is blamed for terrorism, but there is no good or bad terrorists. The entire crisis in the region is the fault of Israel. And that's what people around the world are already saying of Israel, that Israel's a problem. It's the Jews that are the problem, etc., etc. Israel severely harmed our civilian and research system, he said. They speak about Iranian nuclear threat, but Israel has hundreds of bombs and it never signed the Non-Proliferation Treaty for nuclear weapons. That's true. He's no doubt referencing, the prior Natanz nuclear facility sabotage attack, now widely believed an act of covert espionage by Israel, likely via cyber attack, as well as a brazen assassination outside Tehran of a top nuclear scientist, Moshen Farizad, by a remote-controlled gun, apparently. So interesting. Iran being very open about this, blaming Israel again. Remember I mentioned Amir Sarfati, his comment about a war with Iran and Israel. He said, there's going to be a war between Israel and Iran, or there's going to be a covert espionage or some other disaster happen in Iran that will, of course, be blamed on Israel, and likely would be Israel basically attempting to take out Iran's nuclear progress and the weapons they're working towards. They're weeks away at this point, is what the last kind of estimate said about their march. And every time throughout the last 2-5 years, they said they're 3 months away, they're 2 weeks away, they're 6 months away, they're a month away, they're 3 weeks away from a nuclear weapon. And that's because Israel keeps going in there, and every time they get close, Israel does something, some mysterious explosion happens. So I think it's interesting, and Iran seems to believe it's Israel, and they're coming out and saying a war with Israel has already begun, and that it's basically a covert war. So again, you look at the ramp up of things and you put 2 and 2 together. You look at how close we are to economic collapse, and we've been close for many years now. Should have collapsed in 2008. And how much worse is it now after the economies of the world have been completely shut down, basically for a year. Shipping, supply lines, supply chains, all sorts of trouble around the world. Mom and pop shops going bankrupt, etc. And how much closer are we now? And then add on top of that all the spending the governments have had to do to keep people afloat. All the money they've printed to take people through this last year and a half. So we are in quite a bad situation. And economic collapse or war, what happens first, I don't know, but it's obviously escalating towards that point. Does the 7-year tribulation start at the end of this year, this fall period? I don't know. I think it may. There's lots of other prominent people that think it may. Maybe this is 6 months off, a year off. I don't know exactly. We don't know exactly when the Lord's going to return, but based on studying and understanding, how much when the Lord was crucified and raised again, that's kind of the milestone, the kickoff of the last 2,000 years of history, and we're there. And the year 2028 is what me and others have suspected is basically the start of the millennial reign of Christ, the last 1,000-year period, and that's when he comes back. The rapture happening, of course, at the middle point of the 7-year period, just before the wrath of God comes down, and so that's and then you come back off that year 2028 by 7 years. That gets us around, the year 2021. So it's interesting, and I don't think anybody would disagree that there's something strange going on in the world right now, and so better be prepared. And I'll say that you need to get ready. You need to get your hearts ready, get your house in order, get your spiritual life in order. Recognize Jesus Christ as the Lord and Savior. Things are going to get hard from here, and many people are going to lose the faith. They're going to give up. It's going to get too hard for them. You need to recognize, read the end of your book, know that that's going to happen to a lot of people, and ensure it doesn't happen to you. And be in the Word, grow in faith, talk to the Lord, and have a relationship with Him. Thanks for watching. I'll leave it there. We'll see you guys in the next video.